Thud. Before I knew it, I was thrown naked into the yard. My mother-in-law, Nancy, with a demon-like look on her face, looked down at me as I fell on my butt.
You think just because you're a housewife you can stay in the bath for more than 3 minutes.
What are you doing?
You can't even manage the housework properly, and yet you soak in the bath like you've earned it. You're not even tired. This is your punishment. Freeze outside in the dead of winter and reflect on your actions.
With that, Nancy shut the window. It's cold. My wet body chilled quickly, and the water dripping from my drenched hair felt ice cold. When will she let me back in? I can't take it anymore. I lost consciousness right there. But the next morning, an unexpected scene unfolded. Who could have imagined? Instead of me, it was Nancy who lay frozen stiff in the yard. My name is Jessica, and I'm a full-time housewife. My husband, James, and I were classmates during our school days, and we reconnected by chance after we started working, which led us to date and eventually marry. This year marks our 5th wedding anniversary. We've been blessed with a child, our son Robert, who is growing up healthy and robust at age 3. Not long ago, he was a little rascal who liked to scribble with crayons and markers everywhere in the house, causing us trouble, but lately, he seems to have grown out of it, and the frequency of cleaning or replacing wallpapers has decreased. His latest interest seems to be in locks, and if I take my eyes off him for a moment, he's repeatedly locking and unlocking the doors to the yard and the entrance. When Robert started doing this, I was very anxious that he might wander off somewhere on his own, but his interest was solely in the locks, and strangely, he never tried to go through them. Anyway, his obsession with operating the locks is intense. When I unlock the front door while going out, he cries as if he wanted to be the one to open it. Maybe the operation of doors opening and closing stimulates a child's intellectual curiosity. Now, before bedtime, we have become more neurotic about checking if Robert hasn't unlocked some door without our knowledge, but increasing security awareness is never a bad thing, and after all, it's just another cute aspect of his growth. Such seemed to be our smooth sailing life, but at some point, a shadow began to cast over it. That was when we started living with Nancy. A little while ago, after her husband, my father-in-law, passed away, Nancy started feeling lonely living alone at her home and brought up living with us. Most housewives probably wouldn't be thrilled about living with their mother-in-law. I was one of them, and having heard from my mom friends that I'd eventually end up living with her, I was somewhat prepared, but I thought it was still a long way off. Moreover, Nancy probably didn't think very highly of me. During the times I had visited her home for occasions like Christmas, Nancy was very kind to James and even to Robert, making her a good mother and grandmother, but the looks she gave me were always cold. However, with Nancy having just lost her husband, neither James nor I could bring ourselves to treat her poorly, and that's how we ended up living together. James is busy with his work, often not getting home until around midnight. So, the dinner table was often just me, Robert, and Nancy. Even then, Nancy would smile at Robert, but the face she showed me was as stiff as a mask, making it quite awkward. On top of that, whenever she spoke, it was to criticize me.
The food is all too salty to eat. What are you thinking, serving such high-sodium meals to James and Robert? They could get sick because of you.
Saying that, she would stand up, go to the kitchen, and carelessly throw water over the pans and pots filled with side dishes. This would ruin the dinner James was supposed to eat. I try to keep our meals healthy on my own terms. If she found the taste of the food strong, she could adjust it herself. And yet she treated me like this. It's just her way of making trouble for the sake of it. And it's not just about the cooking. As if following a classic mother-in-law playbook, she would also nitpick about the laundry and cleaning.
Hey, can't you even fold clothes properly? Look at the wrinkles in James's clothes. Do them over. I've already put them back in the washing machine. Hang them up properly this time, and make sure there are no wrinkles.
I rushed to check the washing machine, and inside, a large amount of clothing was exposed to water and detergent. If there really were wrinkles, ironing them would have been sufficient. Why put everything that was folded back into the washing machine? It's not just the water bill, but also a waste of time and effort. If she's so concerned about wrinkle-free folding, she should show me how it's done right in front of me. As I was thinking about this, a loud thud came from the living room. As I walked over, irritated, I saw Nancy emptying the vacuum cleaner's dust cup all over the floor.
Can't cook, can't do laundry, and now you can't even clean properly. Do you even have eyes? Look at that. There's dust in the corner. What if Robert gets a respiratory illness? With this mess, who knows where else it's dirty? Start over from scratch.
With that, she went to her room. Why? All my efforts wasted? I questioned myself, but it was clear without even thinking. She just wanted to harass me. If she had simply told me about the remaining dust, I would have cleaned it properly. Please don't scatter the garbage you've just vacuumed up. Fighting back tears, I vacuumed again. When the harassment first started, I gently brought it up with James. As soon as we began living together, I hesitated to tattle to James about the harassment, as it felt like gossiping, so I only hinted at it indirectly. James was sympathetic, but he was also concerned about Nancy, who had just lost her husband, and asked me to bear with it a little longer.
Maybe Mom's acting a bit off because Dad's gone. She seems like she needs to vent her sense of loss on someone to cope. I know it's tough on you, Jessica, but just for a little while.
So, I refrained from confronting Nancy. However, the harassment from Nancy did not cease as time went by. On the contrary, it started to escalate as if it were normal. She threw the dishes in the trash, and the laundry, all of which had been hung out to dry, dropped to the ground and covered in sand. Lately, under the guise of playing with Robert, she would cut up any piece of paper she could find, creating a mess with confetti. The scattered paper covered the floors and wedged into crevices, making cleaning a major hassle and, above all, bad for Robert's education. When I pointed this out to Nancy, she retorted with a sneer.
Bad for education. If you were properly teaching Robert, no matter how much I encouraged him with confetti, he'd know to say no. Can you stop blaming others for your own shortcomings? I am teaching him the importance of saying no through play. Don't twist it as if I'm at fault. All this, everything, it's because you can't even raise a child properly.
Suddenly, she became hysterical and started berating me. These days were certainly stressing me out, and my health was definitely deteriorating. Knowing that Nancy would just mess everything up, doing housework was depressing. Still, for James and Robert, I pushed myself every day. Lately, my stomach ached daily, and I couldn't stop the dizziness, headaches, and nausea. There was no time to rest. I had no appetite, constantly felt nauseous. Everything seemed abnormally bright, and it was hard even to keep my eyes open. My periods became irregular, my weight dropped rapidly, and I visibly thinned.
Are you okay?
James must have noticed something was off as he checked on me. I have someone on my side, so I must endure Nancy's harassment. That's when I realized, do I really have to endure this? James had asked me to bear it for a while, but that while had surely passed. As soon as he spoke, I stopped moving, and James looked even more worried.
Hey, are you really okay? What's wrong?
He stood in front of me, repeatedly asking. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I cried and told him everything that had happened recently.
I can't believe she did all this to you, even though you consulted me before. I'm really sorry I didn't notice. I'll speak sternly to Mom about this. Also, I'll talk to my company to try and come home earlier. That should reduce some of your burden. Jessica, take it easy for a while and recover. Here, let me handle the rest, and you go to sleep tonight.
Encouraged by James, I headed to the bedroom. Usually, because of Nancy's interference, housework dragged on, and even though I didn't work, I often went to bed later than James. I can finally sleep early for the first time in a while. Having unburdened myself to James, I felt somewhat relieved and quickly fell asleep. From the next day, the harassment truly stopped. After leading me to the bedroom, James must have really nailed it down with Nancy. I could handle all the cooking, laundry, and cleaning just the way I wanted to. But Nancy seemed particularly upset that I had told James about her harassment, and now she wouldn't even speak to me. Still, it was better than being harassed. I decided to just ignore Nancy for a while. Then, a few nights later, after dinner, Robert went to take a bath with Nancy and fell asleep shortly after. Nancy seemed to be enjoying a drink in her room. James was still at work and said he'd be late, so I decided to take a bath first. It's the dead of winter now, and I'm really feeling the chill. I'll warm up in the bath until James gets home. Since the talk, James really has been coming home earlier than before. Still, he can't always just do as he pleases, being part of a company, and tonight he's doing overtime for the first time in a while. It's been a long time since the three of us had dinner together, and the atmosphere felt like hell, but it was still much better than before. My health has been improving lately, and I've started to put on some weight again. Have I gained weight? As I sat in the tub, pinching my stomach and upper arms, the bathroom door suddenly banged open with force. Startled, I looked up to see Nancy standing there. What's going on? Wondering what she wanted, I spoke up, but without caring about her wet feet, Nancy walked into the bathroom. Then she grabbed my hair as I sat in the tub. Ouch, wait. Before I could finish, Nancy pushed my head down, submerging my face in the water. Pain as water rushed into my nose, and the fear of not being able to breathe made me flail. Then she yanked my hair, pulling my face above water. I took a deep breath and coughed, but she pushed my head down again. Just when I thought she pulled me up, she dragged me out of the bathroom. I didn't understand what was happening, but I managed to grab a bath towel in the changing area, through the hallway to the living room. Hey, what's this all about? Let me go. Despite my shouting, Nancy kept walking without stopping. As I wondered what she would do next, Nancy opened a window. No way. In an instant, the world turned upside down. A sharp pain shot through my body as gravel dug into my skin, and gradually, a chill enveloped me. I had been pushed by Nancy into the yard. To prevent my body from getting colder, I wrapped the bath towel around me, but it was hardly effective. In fact, I needed to do something about the water soaking my body, or I would get colder and colder. Hey, what are you thinking? Bursting into the bathroom all of a sudden? What did I even do? I looked up at Nancy's face, flushed from drinking, and shouted,
After you spread such a ridiculous story that I was harassing you to James and not even fulfilling your duties as a wife properly, it was all your fault. This is punishment because a failed housewife like you took a bath for more than 3 minutes. Freeze and reflect on it.
With that, she slammed the window shut and locked it. What should I do? The front door is also locked. No other windows are open. I thought about calling for help from the neighbors, but I don't have the courage to wander the streets in just a bath towel. As I stood there, the shivering became uncontrollable. My jaw quivered and my teeth clattered. My wet hair and body were rapidly stealing all my warmth, making me feel sick. This is definitely dangerous. I collapsed in the yard, nearly losing consciousness.
Jessica,
James had just come back from work when he found me collapsed in the yard.
what happened, Jessica? Why are you like this? You're too cold. Let's go to the hospital. But first, put this on.
Saying that, he draped a down jacket over me, carried me to the car, started the engine, and turned on the heater.
Just wait here. I'm going to grab something for you to wear.
With that, James went back inside the house.
That damn old woman. What the hell did you do to Jessica?
I could hear him yelling from inside the house. Then James ran back to the car and handed me some clothes.
It's okay. I'll take you to the hospital. Don't worry.
With that, the car carrying me headed to the hospital. At the emergency hospital, I was fortunate to see a doctor right away. The doctor said if it had been a few hours later, your heart could have stopped. Even while I was in the yard or on the way to the hospital in the car, I thought that somehow someone would find me and everything would be all right. But hearing the doctor's words made me realize just how dangerous my situation had been, and I was terrified. Anyway, I was glad to have been saved. Afterward, I received treatment at the hospital until dawn. As the sun began to rise, we drove home. I was feeling somewhat better and discussed with James what to do about Nancy next.
This time, I can't forgive her. I almost lost you, Jessica. If it's this dangerous, we need to stop living with her. Let her spend her remaining years alone.
Today, of all days, I had no inclination to argue against that. I'm sorry, but I can no longer live with Nancy. I wonder if Robert is okay. I hope he's sleeping quietly. As I worried about this, we arrived home. I leaned on James's shoulder as we walked to the front door. Then I thought I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. Looking to the side, I saw Nancy trembling and rolling on the ground in the yard. A few hours ago, James had put me in the car and headed to the hospital.
Just because I threw that woman out in the yard for a minute, She's over the top. James must have been brainwashed by that bitch Jessica to call me a damn old woman.
While Nant was drinking beer feeling pity for James, Robert came out of the bedroom.
What's up, Robert? Did you wake up? Want to talk with Grandma?
Then Robert came over to her knee, so she bragged a little to him.
Grandma just pulled Robert's mom out of the bath and pushed her into the yard. I'm educating a hopeless mom. Impressive, right?
Robert seemed to understand what she was saying and smiled at her. Then something white was fluttering outside.
Robert, look outside. It's snowing.
She said, opening the window and stepping outside. It might be the first snow. The snow cooled her body, which was warmed by the alcohol. She felt nice.
Robert, want to come out a bit? The snow is beautiful.
As she called out and looked back at the house, she couldn't believe her eyes. Robert had closed the window. Then he started locking and unlocking the window. Nancy was locked out of the yard, as was I.
Robert, no, open the window, please. Grandma is cold and will freeze. Please, open it.
However, Robert moved away from the window instead of unlocking it. Maybe he thought he was scolded for touching the lock. But her plea went and he did, and Robert lay down on the living room carpet and fell asleep. Fortunately, she was wearing heavy clothes, but it was still cold to the core.
No choice. James and Jessica will be back soon. I'll just have to endure until then.
And so, we returned to the time we came back from the hospital. Nancy, what on earth are you doing? When we returned from the hospital, I called out to Nancy reeling in the yard.
You guys, it took you so long to come back.
Nancy spoke to us in a weak voice, shivering.
Actually, I was locked out by Robert.
When I heard that, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Talk about poetic justice. Serves her right. As James supported me with his shoulder, he unlocked the front door. Nancy followed slowly behind, trembling. Just as we were about to enter the house, Nancy stumbled.
Whoa, no.
She cried out as she fell neatly forward, hitting her chin hard on the ground.
Ack.
Oh my God, are you okay? I called out, but Nancy didn't respond. It seemed she had passed out. We hurriedly called an ambulance, and Nancy was rushed to the emergency room. Later on, Nancy was discharged from the hospital, but due to the after effects, speaking and eating became very difficult for her. That day, Nancy had fractured her lower jaw and suffered a concussion from the impact, which caused her to faint. Since then, even talking a little has been a struggle, and fortunately or unfortunately, she hasn't been able to harass me anymore. I felt uneasy about ending our cohabitation under such circumstances, so we still live together, but James has set some conditions and declared to Nancy.
Listen, if you ever harass Jessica again, no matter how much it costs or the trouble it causes, I lend our cohabitation and send you to a nursing home, no matter what. Remember that.
With that, Nancy, either out of genuine reflection or simply because she couldn't speak, stopped harassing me. What goes around comes around. From this whole ordeal, I've learned that mistreating others will eventually come back to haunt you. Now, I look forward to more peaceful days.